Hello, I'm Olive Senior, and I'm really happy to be here sharing this event with you. I'm actually recording this in Jamaica, where I've just been named Poet Laureate, but my other home is Toronto, and it was in Toronto last year during lockdown that I started to write pandemic poems. The first set of poems has now been published in a book called Pandemic Poems, First Wave, but I haven't stopped writing. I'm now writing Pandemic Poems, Second Wave, because I have found that these poems I started writing them as a way of easing my own anxiety, but I shared them on social media, and it was as if we were back at the earliest stages of poetry, where we sat around a fire and we shared the poem and we got feedback. And the feedback that I've been getting on the poems is what has kept me going. So I'm going to read a few of these poems to you, starting with one that I wrote this year. It's second wave poem, A for Anniversary. And I should explain that the poems are based on the lexicon thrown up by the pandemic. So it's an alphabetical listing. Each poem is using a particular word or phrase that we're now all familiar with. So this is A for Anniversary. In 1 year, so much out of touch, so much that is touching, the longing to touch so much. And I'll read you the very first one that I wrote, which was, I think, about March last year. You'll recognize the term, F for flattening the curve. We have beaten nature down, exalted straightness, but somewhere are things we can never control, wildness always trying to break in. When and where, unnoticed for how long, did this bump in the road emerge, this curve that so urgently needs flattening now? And this year I wrote, almost in response to that, because we haven't really flattened the curve. This is B for bump, and it's also in response to all these social issues that have been thrown up by this pandemic, including the whole idea of inequality. B for bump. A curve is not so easily flattened. With uneven ground to start with, new bumps will always burst wide open. A slight imperfection and no buffer could lead to a spilling out of home truths. Now, not even the dead lie flat. They rise up with accusing eyes. Too many taken for a ride and bumped off. The living do their level best, but to flatten also means to crush. A bump implies a shake-up of how things are done. Only a more level playing field will lead to a flattening of this one. This is V for vaccine, and this, you will see, is a different kind of vaccine. This was last year's vaccine. This was a poem from last year, not this year, when vaccine is what we're all talking, when we're talking about a different vaccine. How quickly COVID-19 has been upstaged by a more insidious injection of hate into the black body that has gone viral. Boots on the ground and no social etiquette required. Unless there is rigorous commitment to eradicating poisonous infection, no vaccine to counteract this one will ever be found. And I was writing about the effects of the pandemic and about the effects on nature, and then of course, in the midst of all of that last year, the whole George Floyd incident, if one want, murder of George Floyd, it sort of erupted into our space. And so I wrote this poem called, after listening to the last, what was it, 9 minutes of his life by I wrote B for breathe. It takes one's breath away. A man dying during a pandemic that takes away one's breath. No ventilator, but one brave spectator recording his last breath, his need. Please, somebody. Taking the knee on the neck from men who from birth breathed in tainted air, imbibed a foul history, burning crosses still smoldering. I can't breathe. Like the hot breath of anger consuming the cities, we have breathed this before, this white heat, this burning sensation in the throats of the numerous ones held down, and mama, mama, I can't. Come on, George Floyd. Breathe in the timeless rhythm of Mother Earth waiting for you, for all her lost children, for justice. I'm through. I'm through. And I want to leave you with a poem called H for Hope. Hope sat back when Pandora opened the box to unleash every evil on mankind. Hope alone stayed behind, or so the Greek myth said. In no rush to scatter panic, create pandemonium or pandemic like the rest. Hope is still there inside the box, waiting to be invited. Thank you.